it going, guys?
Hey, what's up, guys? Zon Roberts here. In this video, I'm doing a film analysis of a Netflix show you might have heard about called Maniac. Now, Maniac stars Jonah Hill and Emma Stone, amongst others, Justin Theroux. And it's kind of a complex, cerebral, very cerebral show that basically follows this girl and this guy who end up meeting each other through taking this controversial drug study. It basically follows Jonah Hill and Emma Stone's characters, Owen and Annie, who meet each other and eventually fall in love at a controversial drug study that uses dreamlike hypnosis and puts subjects into a psychedelic trance of sorts in order to attempt to deal with their underlying psychological problems. So that's the basic synopsis of the show, but it goes off into all types of complex twists and turns in sort of a Lynchian, Twin Peaksian type manner. I don't think it's as good as Twin Peaks for numerous reasons. It's a pretty entertaining show, but there's a lot of SJW type propaganda in there, and there's also a fair amount of occult symbolism. And that's what this video is going to be about pointing out a lot of this stuff. Now, I, as opposed to some videos I've made where they're just on the spot, this one I wrote down pretty much everything that I was going to say in sort of a blog or article type format. And that's how it's going to be.
Alright, let's get right into this. And now to the wine.
Twin Peaks reference, y'all. Yeah. Maniac starts out with the propaganda pretty much from the get-go, with a scene in which one of the main characters, Annie, played by Emma Stone, scoffs at a legit conspiracy theorist store clerk who claims the popular app Aid Buddy is used to track your every movement. She makes fun of them. Aid Buddy is basically an app that assigns you a person you can get who will help you out with purchasing food, train tickets, and other things. So basically, it's the futuristic socialist evolution of welfare. And combined with the earlier soft disclosure, it's assumed we are to gather that they do indeed use it to track your movements and everything about you at all time. As mentioned earlier, one of the main protagonists is Annie, played by Emma Stone, who is a perpetually angry feminist socialist junkie who hasn't had a job in 6 months and uses blackmail to get what she wants at times. So in a way, it's making blackmail seem cool and fashionable. She's addicted to a pharmaceutical that makes her relive a trauma over and over again, and assuming is at least partially responsible for her emotional instability. So basically, soft disclosure about how the pharmaceutical companies are ruining people's lives with their drugs. There's studies that say actually pharmaceuticals actually can make mental illness worse, and this has been linked to some of these shootings and what have you. The other main protagonist is Owen, played by Jonah Hill, who is a soft-spoken schizophrenic with delusions of grandeur. As a schizotypal person myself, I found it interesting to see it represented on the big, little screen, and Owen's hallucinations of his brother in searching for complex patterns in life are interesting. However, beyond this, he is your typical modern-day beta cuckboy. The traditionally more masculine, if you will, characters in the show are portrayed as either villains or goofballs, or both. As is the case with Dr. James Mantelray, played by Justin Theroux, one of the main scientists in control of the drug study, who is a narcissistic male scientist obsessed with the usage of technology for pornography purposes. And I think we're supposed to take away from this that, like, he's such an awful person that he looks at pornography, I guess. That's subconscious subtext I suppose you're supposed to take from it, I guess. But, however, the main villain is Owen's brother, Jed. An admittedly kind of douchey, but seemingly harmless alpha male narcissist with perfect looks and who is also immensely talented as a vocalist and has an attractive wife. He has been accused in the show of raping a woman, and judging by Owen's whiny virtue signaling about it, we, the audience, are expected to automatically believe this to be true because, you know, of course he did it, because he's a douchey alpha male, and every time a woman accuses a man of sexual assault, the woman is always right, right? Now let us all praise Aphrodite, goddess of the four winds, and keeper of the cocks and their chastity devices. Furthermore, Owen's family is immensely wealthy, so wouldn't it make sense actually that this woman is just falsely accusing the brother of rape to get at his millions? I mean, it makes sense. This isn't to say that real rapes don't happen, but we can't go jumping on the bandwagon and assuming that every circumstance is accurate, you know, because all white cisgendered males are bad and all women are saints, right? Okay, this is the subconscious message we are supposed to take away from this. The audience gets an extra dose of subconscious, you must see this awful white cisgendered male as the enemy, here's why. When a flashback reveals that he blackmails Owen into testifying on his behalf by saying he'll tell the government that Owen psychotically believes he has to attack the US government to save the world. While this is admittedly an awful thing, the irony and hypocrisy of this is in that the feminist character, Annie, blackmails a woman who works at a drug study to get in because she is addicted to the drug they are studying. So basically it's okay when our powerful militant feminist female protagonist blackmails someone, but horrible and villainous when Owen's white cisgendered male brother does it, right? Obviously, blackmail is awful no matter who does it. We shouldn't be supporting it in either of these characters. However, in real life, I don't think a guy would blackmail his own brother just because he's a traditionally good-looking, narcissistic, alpha male musician, whatever. Or maybe some would. You know, evil lies in the hearts of all men and women. But we can't go around assuming guilt just because of someone's race or gender. It's unbelievably reverse racist and reverse sexist, and I'm honestly not surprised it made its way into this show. The show attempts to humanize the pharmaceutical companies by portraying its workers as basically good, interesting people. The main workers are a kind of goofy, older Japanese scientist, his soft-spoken but strong hipster feminist female co-scientist, and a fat black dude who is a basic worker type guy. Also a weird Hal, you know, from 2001: A Space Odyssey. Also a weird Hal style talking computer with a female voice who can apparently think and feel. The drug has been proven to be dangerous, and at one point a drug study user says it's unethical, to which the black dude worker replies, "You waived ethics when you signed up for the study." Yeah, I bet. Illuminati government bureaucratic politics at its finest. And yet simultaneously we're supposed to sympathize or even feel humor at these characters, despite their complicit involvement in an evil corporate pharmaceutical industry with deep ties to both government and satanic Illuminati elites. So, basically, as I referenced earlier, Owen, the schizophrenic character played by Jonah Hill, frequently hallucinates an alternate version of Jed, his brother, who tells him to do different stuff. So at one point in time, Jed, the hallucination Jed, tells him that Annie is his handler, an obvious reference to MK Ultra mind control, though I'm sure a lot of people who watch the show wouldn't fucking get that. It'd go over their heads. But basically that's an MK Ultra CIA mind control reference. Owen in general would be the perfect candidate to be a mind control Manchurian candidate assassin. We have seen this through all the large-scale killers in the public eye, from serial killers like the Son of Sam who claimed he was a part of a greater CIA satanic cult of killers. To Nicholas Cruz, who claims demonic voices, which could have been CIA using MKUltra, told him to commit those crimes. And there's a lot of evidence, if you watch Jay Dyer and some other people, there's a lot of evidence linking this to like MKUltra mind control experiments, and other things. In episode 4, the series takes an interesting spin when Owen and Annie take the B drug. Okay, a little context there. The drug that the drug that Annie is addicted to is called drug A, which is supposed to be the first drug in this series that's supposed to help you come to terms with a trauma. Except that drug A just basically makes you relive the trauma. And that's what she's addicted to. She's addicted to reliving this trauma, which I'll explain later what that is. But once they actually go through the study, somehow she got like a bootleg of the drug. But once they're in the study proper, in episode 4, the series takes an interesting spin when Owen and Annie take the B drug and imagine themselves in an alternate reality where they are a couple from 1980s Long Island who get wrapped up in a wacky adventure to rescue a ring-tailed lemur from black market fur traders. Towards the end, Annie's character starts cracking at the seams mentally and remembers something from Annie's life instead. Now, I actually quite like this episode. It was quirky and funny. Reminiscent of Wes Anderson's 1996 heist comedy Bottle Rocket, if you've ever seen that, with Owen Wilson and Luke Wilson. I was going to say in general that the show's cinematic style was like Wes Anderson meets David Fincher meets Terry Gilliam. So basically it's like a Fincher-esque dark exploration of an unsettling dystopia softened by comedic absurdism, which is 2 parts Anderson's quirky indie absurdism and Gilliam's loonier brand of absurdist social commentary. At times, it is even Lynchian, David Lynch. In particular, the concept of these characters imagining themselves in alternate realities as different people throughout the years. First as the 80s couple, later 1940s grifters, and other parts. It reminds me of Carl Jung's concept of archetypes, a concept that is hard to explain but can loosely be translated as personality types that get reincarnated and transmuted throughout the ages into new bodies and new identities. Lynch's Twin Peaks Season 3, amongst other films by him, explore this often. But Annie's identity crisis in Maniac Episode 4 reminded me of the final episode of Twin Peaks Season 3, where Daryl Cooper and Laura Palmer become different people. Palmer is oblivious of her previous identity until a nightmarish trauma towards the end causes her to recall her unfortunate fate in frightening detail. Because as Twin Peaks fans will know, like she was the main murder victim in that show. This ties into the philosophical idea of trauma being passed down through one's reincarnated lives. For instance, if you died in a previous life from being eaten alive by insects, you may develop a fear for insects in your current incarnation. Personally, I believe this is something that happened to me. I believe I had past life trauma involving insects because right now I have this irrational fear of insects. That's for another day. At the end of episode 4, Owen's past life is looking through a book and finds reference to an owl, and suddenly remembers one of his other past lives. The owl is a common symbol associated with the Illuminati and Freemasonry. Episode 5 goes into one of Owen's and Annie's past lives, in which they were 1940s grifters attending a high-ranking Illuminati seance. It's never revealed on the surface that it's an Illuminati occult satanic ritual, but all the obvious symbols are there. Everyone is dressed like Illuminati elites, and an owl statue is situated in the parlor room. Another guest goes into a brief conversation about how the owl is symbolism for the moon and protection. which is accurate. At one point, a butler is spraying incense, a tool often used for spiritual cleansing, but it can also be used as a way to help the spirits come into being. And then he states that he needs to prepare for the illumination. Also, the secret society are referred to as the Never Dies, a possible reference to the Illuminati's belief in using technology to live forever. Probably out of fear of death because they have forfeited their souls to Lucifer. Now, this is something that I came across not too long ago. You may have heard about it. How high-ranking elites are using sort of blood transfers from like young people, and they weren't really specific what they mean by that. It could be anything from like children to, just adolescents, like 20-somethings, and they're using it to extend their lifespans. So basically, it's assumed that it's like basically, a sort of normalizing of what they've been doing anyway. It's assumed from satanic sacrifices of like children and whatnot, but it's like made official now through mainstream science, I guess. An interesting aside is that that also was a narrative in the show. It was used as a sub-narrative in Altered Carbon, a dystopian sci-fi show also on Netflix. One of the main narratives there is that the elites have been living for hundreds of years through body transfers, which is essentially the same thing. The juxtaposition between the scientists analyzing the subject's dream data and this apparent fantasy about 1940s grifters and Illuminati seances in episode 5, I think, is soft disclosure stating that magic and science are the same, and that bad science, here symbolized by the evil pharmaceutical companies, and bad magic, symbolized by the satanic black magic, are the same by consequence. In this episode, the female Hal machine implements herself into the subject's fantasies. I think the fantasies here, like I stated earlier, are just remembrances of past lives, just like the initial dreams from Drug A, remembrances of past trauma. Perhaps this is a satanic black magic machine used to discover the source of past traumas throughout the millennia and catalog the emotional and spiritual wavelengths in order to better control the subjects. Perhaps. I think you might be on something. I think you might be on something there, man. Oh, yeah. Ollie and Arlie, and this is their grifters alternates. Owen and Annie's 1940s grifter alternates are Ollie and Arlie. Ollie and Arlie go looking to score and steal an ancient sacred book, assumably to sell. And I believe it's Don Quixote. And I was watching Jay Dyer where he made this correlation about how Don Quixote is like this insane guy who's always living in the past, and there's some sort of correlation there, I guess. Because Annie is always living in the past because of her trauma. Because basically, which I don't think if I explained here, she was in the same car as her sister, and her always used to like not always get along. Half the time they used to fight a lot, and the sister was like moving away from New York or something, and they were having like a one last hurrah like trip, and they were driving a car, and they got distracted or something by taking a picture and veered off the side of the road, and the sister died. So that's the trauma that Annie has been forcing herself to relive over and over again. At one point, Owen sees his disembodied brother, Jed, who tells him he was his brother's twin in the room, but that his brother strangled him. He then coughs up ectoplasm. Is this soft disclosure reference to the MK Ultra concept of causing the minds of subjects to schism into separate identities, one good, one evil, in order to seed division? Could be. Could very well be.
Episode 9, Alien Invasion Mythos Predictive Programming.
So in episode 9, in another one of these fantasies that they're having, Owen becomes a Belgian doofus who has accidentally killed an alien, and Annie becomes an undercover CIA agent who has infiltrated the Belgian government. It is stated by Owen's brother that she is his handler, and we learned that earlier. Annie reveals that Owen's Belgian character, Sonny, is an unconscious agent, an alien infiltrator, if you will, that his conscious self is not aware of. This seems to me to be soft disclosure again of the concept of mentally ill Manchurian candidates who get triggered by their CIA handlers to complete missions. This is very important soft disclosure, as we will see later in the episode. So the unconscious agent turns out to be Owen waking up to take control of the situation as the female HAL robot, in a depressed frenzy, has hijacked all the subjects' minds in an attempt to be one with them forever. Owen and Annie are woken up to their true selves by Owen's brother to complete the mission of disabling the HAL robot. Okay. Now, in the context of this show, this is fairly innocent, as the mission is to dismantle the crazy HAL robot that is attempting to hijack their minds. However, I believe the subconscious subtext we are meant to gather from this is that we should allow the nefarious CIA Illuminati to hijack our minds to complete missions to their ends under the false pretense of saving the world. We see this in the real world with socialist Marxist freedom fighters, quote-unquote, getting manipulated and their anger weaponized by CIA Illuminati interests to save the world, quote-unquote, from the awful conservatives and free speech advocates who somehow, in their delusional minds, are threatening to take away their transgender bathrooms and pronouns, lol. We also see from the opposite side, with often stereotypically conservative-leaning war advocates being manipulated by media to save the world from terrorists that the CIA themselves pay and train to be our enemies. This is a more general way that the Illuminati gets us to participate in ritualistic, false hero battles, but in a more direct way pertinent to this show. Schizophrenics and mentally ill folks are frequently manipulated by MK Ultra mind control techniques to participate in these fake save-the-world operations, often with even deadlier consequences, being triggered to go on killing sprees or otherwise. This is sad because I believe that schizophrenics are in reality shamanic types, with hidden insights and abilities to peer beneath the layers of surface reality and find the agendas and symbolism lurking beneath. That is, if they are disciplined and exposed to the right information. And of course, I'm also referencing Twin Peaks again. See, I got the hat on for a reason. Because at one point in time, Dale Cooper says of the one-armed man character, Philip Gerard, that he, in modern society, he is looked at as a schizophrenic. Whereas in old society, he would have been seen as a shamanic type, a magician, of, if you will, who can see beneath the layers of surface reality. Now, the CIA recognizes the power of these individuals. That's why they seek to control them with MK Ultra techniques, in order to get them to uncover the wrong symbols, the wrong agendas, fake symbols, fake agendas, and other disinformation mapped out to deter people. Fake symbols, fake agendas, and other disinformation mapped out to deter people becoming awake in wrong directions, or to make them become pseudo-awake, through disinformation. Episode 9 also in general is also predictive programming about the dangerous overstepping of technology to take over our lives and worlds. This is obvious. However, it's interesting that in this scenario, technology only does this after it is given a soul and a feeling, in contrast to most dystopian technology Terminator-type scenarios in which the tech takes over because it is lacking feeling and emotion. In this scenario, the computer thinks it is actually helping the subjects relieve their traumas by keeping them in computerized fantasy forever. Is this a simple allegory for the importance of moving on from past pain? Or is it a soft disclosure to encourage us to sever ourselves from the natural state of love consciousness? It could also be a soft disclosure about what they're trying to do in general about progressing society into becoming heavily reliant upon virtual reality, at the expense of real life. So basically, we would be moving closer and closer to an actual Matrix type reality. There's a lot of meta complexity going on in this show, so it's anyone's guess. I just noticed something that I didn't put in here, I don't think. Earlier in the show, Jed's brother, who's a singer, is singing a kind of rather corny version of the song, the classic Sting song, I'll Be Watching You, or whatever it's called. What's interesting about that is that people think that song's about like some relationship thing, but in reality that song is about Big Brother. I believe that song may have actually been inspired by 1984. It's interesting to tie that into the show because, I don't know, one of the subtexts of the show is like how government, is watching us, is controlling us, predominantly here in this context through the pharmaceutical companies and through virtual reality technology. So just because of that, I'm going to break into a brief acapella of Sting. I don't really like this song, but whatever.
Every step you take, every shit you take, I'll be watching you.
Alright, there you go. Let's get back on subject. Yeah! This is further complicated by the fact that the human personality of the computer was based on the neurotic, parapathiliac scientist Justin Theroux's awkward and vaguely Oedipalian incestuous relationship with his mother, played by Sally Field, who may have abused him. Parapathiliac means he masturbates a lot. Okay. This suggests that some rerouted psychological superimposition onto an exterior thing may be going on. His damaged relationship with his mother is perhaps why he feels more comfortable with intimacy with software programs rather than real-world intimacy. So when it becomes apparent that the HAL machine must be destroyed, Sally Field's character states, "It's not so easy to kill a mother's love." Perhaps with the machine finally being disabled, is this comment on how we must disable ourselves from the all-loving Christ consciousness and embrace cold-hearted satanic Illuminati machinery consciousness instead? Or is it a comment on how we must separate ourselves from the safety of the shore of the mother's proverbial womb? Because like Annie reliving a trauma over and over in her mind, it hinders our progress to be constantly enslaved by the past. I'm not sure. Perhaps it is both. In the dream realm, Annie's character comforts the machine consciousness to get over her attachment to her relationship with the now deceased Japanese scientist Robert, and in turn, the machine aids Annie in letting go of the memory of her deceased sister and the dreaded situation that caused her death. Resolution is reached for both of them, and then the scientists sever the machine consciousness for good. Now let's flash back a little bit earlier here. In episode 8, Owen experiences a hallucination where he is a member of a crime family who is propositioned by police to betray his family. Or blackmailed, rather. This mirrors his real-life situation where he is expected to testify on his brother's behalf to vouch for him. The thought occurred to me that this entire show may in fact just be analogous to how mind control is being used by the CIA, and in this case the psychological and pharmaceutical end of the MK Ultra machine, more directly to manipulate subjects' brains towards end goals. Of course, in the show, they say they are attempting to manipulate their brains to help them. They induce these hallucinations as some kind of abstract dream therapy. Perhaps they are doing more than inducing the hallucinations. Perhaps they are directing them. This is analogous considering the fact that the main character, Owen, frequently has hallucinations of his brother who tells him to complete a mission, and then refers to Annie as his handler, which most people know, and I have previously established as a common MK Ultra term for mind control. In addition to considering the HAL computer run amok is directly inputting itself into the subject's dreams to manipulate them, again I think is soft disclosure. The entire show, I believe, is a veiled soft disclosure for how MK Ultra inputs itself into the minds of not only individual subjects, but society as a whole, towards certain ends. As we see with Episode 8, Owen's dreams are manipulated to make him have a false extremist viewing of his ultra-normal family as monstrous mafioso types who must be exposed, and that it's completely okay to betray them. Cops and FBI are his good-natured allies in this episode, despite the fact that they are clearly cynically indifferent towards his well-being. They put him in harm's way by having him betray his family, his mafia family in the hallucination. A man who was later revealed to be an undercover FBI agent poses as a shady family doctor who allows Owen to destroy himself by supplying him dangerous pharmaceutical drugs for self-medication. The undercover FBI and cops are symbolism for the destructive influence of the state who manipulate modern humans into betraying their families, or even the traditional concept of family, in favor of marrying them, e.a. the state, instead. We're led to believe this is okay because the brother is a rapist monster who took advantage of a woman because he was mad with power provided by his family's wealth and influence. It's a shitty bit of virtue signaling meant to program an assumption of wealthy whites as evil, horrible people. Not only that, the supposed rape victim is black. Oh, those awful whites. Always giving the minorities a hard time, I guess. So, some subconscious subtext there. After finally deciding to testify against his family, they disown Owen, his family disown him, and have him committed to a mental institution where he later gets rescued by Annie, and they run off together. Now, remember that his imagined hallucination version of his brother earlier referred to Annie as his handler, okay? And handlers are creepy CIA operatives of the Illuminati state. So essentially, Owen ultimately betrays his family to run off with the state, symbolically speaking. And in case you want to accuse me of reading way too much into this with paranoid conspiracy eyes, recall this. In the earlier episode where Owen and Annie are in the fantasy about Belgian politicians battling aliens, Annie's alternate self reveals herself to be a CIA agent, okay? So you can't make this shit up. Further proof that the subconscious conclusion that they want you to take away is this. Betray and abandon your family for the state. Allow yourself to be mind controlled by dangerous pharmaceutical drugs. The shady scientists making them, and the black magic computers aiding in their production and implementation. Wealthy whites are always evil and always in charge, and every other race is their oppressed victim. Maniac is well directed, well acted, has good cinematography, and good music. I quite enjoyed all the absurdity of it and the complexity of emotions and concepts in it. However, despite all of this, I can't get past all the occult symbolism and SJW virtue signaling in it, which kind of ruins the whole thing for me. It's really too bad because it was a pretty clever and inventive series. The Illuminati and SJWs truly ruin everything. One more note. I guess the production company that makes the program is called Owl People or something. Again, obvious Masonic Illuminati reference there. Tying back into like episode 5 or 6 or whatever, where they got the seance. So, basically, that's all she wrote. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe right here where my beard is. Where I just sniffled my nose and where I'm doing this weird hand thing. Please subscribe right here, motherfuckers. Right up here is another video. It's gonna be some kind of song, some kind of conscious music, conscious comedy skit, or some kind of discussion. And right up here is something very similar to that. Okay, subscribe, bitches. Yeah.